Call to order the April 8th, 2024 regular meeting of the East Bethel City Council. Can you please rise and say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you like to make a motion to adopt the agenda, Brian?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Motion's made and seconded to adopt tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Our first item on the agenda under presentations and public hearings is the 2023 audit presentation by ABDO, and we have Mr. Mike Jaworski, who's our Director of Finance and also Deputy City Administrator, who's taking the lead now. Go ahead, Mike.
Again, the 2023 annual financial report has been prepared, audited, and is going to be presented here by Brad Faltasek from ABDO. With that, I'll just hand it over to Brad for his presentation.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for having us tonight. I'm here with Alex. He's going to be presenting some of it as well, but I'll start it out. If you want to, I'll just tell you when to flip. Okay. So the first slide here just tells just what we're going to go through tonight, and that is I'll talk about our opinion and our responsibility in arriving at that opinion. Go through Alex go through the general fund results, other governmental fund results, and the enterprise fund results, and then I'll finish it up talking about different performance indicators, comparing your city to other cities of similar size within the county as well as throughout the state of Minnesota. So that gets us into our audit results. So when you have an audit performed, you are looking for, we're issuing an auditor's opinion on your financial statements. There's 3 pages that you're really paying for in the audit. And to arrive at that opinion, we go through a number of different tests and through our audit procedures and stuff to arrive at that opinion and to ensure that what's in the financial statements is accurately, materially presented accurately and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So we are issuing, or we have issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on your financial statements this year. So that's opinion you received in the prior years as well. It's just saying that we believe everything in the financial statements is materially accurate and, again, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The state audit requires us to go through a series of checklists as well to make sure that you're following specific state statutes that they want us to test as part of our financial statement audit. As long as we're out here, they want us to test some other things as well. So we went through those series of checklists. We're looking at things like deposits and investments, making sure your deposits are insured, make sure if you have investments that they're in the proper investments. If you're issuing any debt or anything like that, to make sure you're following proper procedures, entering into construction contracts, those types of things to make sure you're following different state statutes around that. So if there's any compliance issues, we'd report those in this Minnesota Legal Compliance Letter, and we're not reporting any non-compliance with what they've asked us to test either. So both reports are clean reports this year. So that's good.
Yep.
Any questions? Do you have a question? Otherwise, I'll have Alex come up.
Yeah, they used to have these in a notebook that we could follow.
A paper copy?
Yeah, do you have one?
No, we don't have any. We don't print them anymore. We send them out. They should be in your packet, right?
Oh, I've got it on somewhere.
But yeah, they were sent in advance of the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can
Yep.
get you a copy.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. And then I'll have Alex come up and look at the financial results.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. Like Brad said, I'll be going through the financial results. Just a little background on me. I know this is my first time here. I've been working on the East Bethel audit for the past 3 years with ABDO and working with Mike through the audit. So nice to finally be here and meet you guys. We'll start with the general fund balance here. That orange line represents the budget amount that increased slightly through your guys' approval for the increase there. Then that yellow line, represents the actual increase in fund balance for 2023. You can see that took a pretty big jump in 23 compared to the prior years. That is due to revenues exceeding the budget amounts, a big chunk of that being the $515,000 in public safety aid. And then the expenses were below budget by about $230,000, which contributed to that fund balance increase, a big chunk of that being that unfilled planning and zoning position during the year. And then that black line at the bottom is just following your guys' fund balance policy of 40%. And then if you go on to the next page, it compares the actual revenues and expenditures for the year with the budget. And that you can see those totals there, like I mentioned before, that public safety aid making up a big chunk of that, $953,000, and then that $234,000 below budget expenditure amount. And then that transfer, that is for the budgeted capital costs out to other funds. So that decreased that fund balance amount from that 1.6 million down to that 1,043,000 there, resulting in that final increase in fund balance that you saw on the chart before. Moving on to the general fund revenues. This just breaks out your revenues by type. Those property taxes increasing pretty consistently, that intergovernmental large increase that you see there. Again, that's that public safety aid contributing to that. Charges for services are pretty steady. And then the other revenues increased a little bit more than we've seen in the past. That is due to that $100,000 in revenue from the conduit debt issuance. So that is a little different than the prior year, showing that increase there. And then on the next page or slide is the general fund expenditures by type. And this is pretty consistent, not too much up or down anywhere. Pretty consistently increasing in public safety, public works, culture and rec, and other. Mostly we've seen that across the board just due to inflationary expense increases. And then the capital project fund balances, you have them all outlined up top there. And then the fund balance classifications down below. That restricted amount represents the TIF district fund balances, all of them that are positive. And then the committed portion represents that major fund, that street capital fund, that decreased a little bit this year. And then the assigned portion represents projects that are outlined above. You'll see the park acquisition, Menard Street, park capital, and then everything that is showing a negative fund balance amount above is going to be shown as unassigned. We don't show negative fund balances as restricted, committed, or assigned. So that final column there for unassigned represents all those negative amounts, regardless of if it's a TIF district or a project fund. That's where it ends up. And then moving on to special revenue fund balances, those all steadily increase with their revenues exceeding their expenses. These are all from revenue sources that are restricted or committed due to levies and the HRA and EDA fund. Then the recycling fund is made up of that county grant money and it's restricted to being spent on recycling expenditures. On to the debt service. This shows your total cash and investments at the end of the year, total assets, and then the amount outstanding. And then we have down below that graph showing your future debt payments broken out between principal and interest. All of these payments are funded by levies and debt service funds, so those are already fully funded. Then moving on to the water fund, you can see pretty consistent year over year with those receipts exceeding the disbursements, and then that resulting down below in that increase in cash. And that budget, that minimum target balance line, that's just based off of 50% of the operating costs for the year. So that went up a little bit and kind of follows that pattern of the receipts exceeding the disbursements. And then same type of graphics for the sewer fund. That black portion of that bar you see up above, That represents the Met Council loan, and that's paid out of revenue from connections. And then again, down below, you can see that steady increase in cash balance like we saw in the water fund. The ice arena in the past, it looks like it's came pretty close to breaking even every year, with the exception of this year. That, kind of the way to break that down, what we saw is there was some capital expenses in the prior year outstanding at last year, so the cash didn't actually leave until 2023, even though it was purchased in 22. And then that resulted in that cash decrease for the arena fund as well. And because those expenditures were higher, that minimum target balance line increased a little bit. And then your internal service fund, we have cash balances there representing that just equipment replacement charged to other departments within the city. And then that small portion is for that compensated absences liability payments. And then the cash and investment balances here, this graph shows by fund type. So we went through the debt service funds, the special revenue funds, the capital funds, and the internal service funds. So that breaks that out based on the cash balances we already looked at. It kind of just brings them all together, shows you what portion is made up of each fund type. For the most part, your general fund holds most of the cash along with your internal service fund. And those enterprise funds are, like we saw, building cash year over year. So that increased as well. So a pretty steady increase in each fund type cash balance. And then I will turn it back over to Brad. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So to summarize some of that up to, other than some of your capital project funds that are in a deficit right now due to kind of waiting on some of the state aids coming in, most of your funds are in really good shape. I think overall your city's in good shape. I think the previous slide really showed that with that increase in cash year after year. So I think you're doing pretty well. The next few charts though will show you kind of how you compare to other cities, again, of similar size within the county and then across the state of Minnesota. So as far as tax rates, the class 3 cities, that's are cities across the state, and then the yellow bars on these are the other cities within the county. So as far as tax rate, you're lower, you've been historically lower than others in the county on average, and also others across the state of Minnesota. Same with the taxes per capita on the right, you're just about where others are at the end of 2021. You can see 2022, we would typically have data for 2022 right now. The states, we get all the information from the state after they get done compiling it. They haven't issued those reports yet, so that's why you see 2 years of no data. So we're still comparing to 2 years prior, but with the taxes per capita, you're about where others are in the county. Next slide, your debt, long-term debt per capita. So this is taking a look at the 2 outstanding bonds. You have outstanding, we just divide that by the number of residents. You can see you're a little bit higher than the rest of the county in this category as far as outstanding debt, but then throughout the state of Minnesota, you're slightly lower there in those categories. Same thing with your debt service expenditures. You can see if you have those 2 bonds outstanding, you've been paying them down. You can see that black line is steadily going down as you're paying those bonds off. So you're still slightly higher as far as what you're paying out in debt service requirements on an annual basis. The last 2 charts, your current expenditures. So this takes out any debt service requirements, takes out any capital expenditures you have each year. Just looking at your current expenditures and how you're operating just on a day-to-day basis. You can see peer groups are higher in the current operating expenses on a kind of daily basis here. So you're some would say maybe operating more efficiently than others in this category as far as just the kind of day-to-day operation type pieces.
Do you remember what population number you're using?
We are in the class 3 cities, which is population.
Oh, so you don't use the estimated population of East Bethel?
We use, so the comparisons are from, the class 3 cities are, I think, 10,000 to 20,000. Class 2 cities are 20,000 to 75,000, and then above that's class 1 cities.
So you use the same range for all 3 of those?
Yep, so
Okay.
what we're comparing your city to is other cities within the 10 to 20,000 population. If that makes sense.
Not really. What I'm
Okay.
asking is, how did you arrive at what the per capita spending is for East Bethel? What
We use
population?
your population. We use your population as its most, whatever the latest.
What's the number? 12,000?
I don't know what is.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't
That's what that's what I was
That
wondering.
I don't know. No.
Okay.
Whatever's been published at the latest. Yep.
Latest census estimate,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
About 12,250 or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we're using. And then the capital expenditures per capita, this is gonna fluctuate from year to year, based on the projects you have going on. So in 2021, you had quite a few projects going on, some big projects in 2021, and the last couple of years haven't had quite as many, but, that just kind of sees where you're at and what everybody else is doing across the state. So,
Well, we
Thank you.
appreciate the great job that you folks do for us. We have a lot of faith in Mike, and he thinks a lot about you, so.
yeah, we enjoy working with Mike too. He does a nice job getting everything ready and it's pretty efficient.
Yep.
We come in and things are prepared and
Yep, and he says the
And find
same,
anything.
same about you, so.
wonderful. That's good.
I have one question.
Yeah,
Reading through the executive governance summary.
Yep.
You mentioned least receivable. What does that refer to? What least receivable do we have?
so antenna lease, I believe it's antenna lease if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So you have
Antenna
a-
lease,
Antenna
oh,
lease, yeah.
okay.
So,
I wondered what we were leasing out, that's.
no, it's leasing space on top of a tower
Oh,
is what it
okay.
is.
All right,
Yep. So
Very
it's a
simple.
long-term lease that, standard state needs to be recorded.
okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any question, folks? Well, thank you very much for an excellent report.
All right, thank you.
Mike, thanks for doing
Thank
your
you.
job so well.
Yeah, could you, leave him that paper copy with the graphs? I looked
Yep.
through the report that you guys sent here, a bunch of numbers.
I can get you a paper copy.
I got this one all marked up.
Uh,
I'll get
It's like getting all the answers to the test.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2024-31, accepting the 2023 audit.
I'll make a resolution that we accept the 2024-31 city audit as is.
Second.
Motion's made
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Thank you, guys. Thank you
See you
very
guys.
much. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda, which is the public forum. Is there a sign-up sheet on that podium or that lectern? Okay, we have one person signed up for the public forum, and that's Ms. Tammy Gimple.
Tammy Gimple, 22359 Baton Street.
Good
Mayor,
evening.
Council, evening. I was looking through the packet tonight and I saw your agenda number 8.0G2 for the contractual agreement for services to evaluate the fire management and consultation. And I'm wondering.
Excuse me, where are you at on the agenda? I'm sorry.
right here.
8.0G2.
Oh,
The Capstone LLC contract approval.
oh, okay. So,
So I guess what I'm wondering, I read through it and stuff, I'm wondering why, was it council that is looking for this? Who looked for this? Who went and asked for this? Was it council? Was it the fire department? It had to
what's the genesis of the question?
Well, how did this item come to be?
Right.
Well, different conversations with different people. The East Bethel Fire Department accounts in 2024 for about $1.1 million budget, give or take. And to my knowledge, there's never been anybody, a third party outside of the department, look at how it, are we doing everything we're supposed to be doing, and are we doing it well when it comes to the East Bethel Fire Department? And that's based on my conversations with some firefighters, on other members of the city council and staff. And Mr. Look happened to know this gentleman, Mr. Strike from Now Then, who does this for a living as a retired emergency management services person with, I don't know how many years of experience, a lot of them. And so we had him give a presentation at our last work meeting, and we said it sounded like a good idea, or I guess it was a city council meeting, excuse me. And Fire Chief Sano agreed that it would be a good idea, so we asked him to make a proposal.
Okay, so
That's
it
as
came
close
from
as I
council.
can get from the.
No, it was a good answer. So it was because of the budget that is on there now, that the council thought, let's look through and see what,
Well, it's interesting, you know, we had a huge increase in the Anoka County Sheriff's Department last year. It was like 14%. But we only contract services from the Anoka County Sheriff's Office. It's a county level. They have the management of it. With the East Bethel Fire Department, we actually oversee the operations of that. And so if you've been watching the city council, we tend to we're focused on doing due diligence, and to do due diligence requires getting facts about stuff. And sometimes it's frustratingly slow, like with Nexus or with Capstone, not this Capstone, Capstone Homes in Viking Meadows. I know we heard plenty about how slow that was, but we're just very deliberate and we need facts. And when we found out in particular that no one had ever looked at the operations of the East Bethel Fire Department in anybody's memory. And I talked to a number of firefighters, and other people here did too. It just seemed like a prudent thing to do would be to get a third-party opinion of how we're doing, you know? And I think that's why Rod Sano agreed that it was a good idea. He's our fire chief. I'm explaining to the people watching.
okay.
Excuse me.
Not explaining to me, right?
No.
So, I can appreciate that.
Uh-huh.
I guess the fire chief is hired he is a manager of the fire department. I mean, I guess you guys all know that. And
Yep.
everything in there that Jerry Strike also he's well-known also in fire service. Obviously, if Matt Look referred him, he also is well-known in East Bethel Fire Service. I would maybe hesitate to, I mean, did you look at any other consultation places that would be doing?
I looked at some online. I couldn't find any in Minnesota that I could, locate online. And the other ones, one was from California, the other one was from Oregon, and we were talking about $30,000 to $50,000 all in by the time you cover all the expenses. And that seemed a little out of line. The $10,000, well, I mean, it would be great if it was $100, but the $10,000 on a 1.1 million budget is 0.9% of the budget. To do again, it's a third party, disinterested party, no vested.
Are you sure about that, though?
Well, no dog in the fight.
There's a good old boys club in the fire department, and I'm sure you're well aware, there might be a good old boys club here, I don't know. And that does concern me with Jerry Strike being the person that is doing this. Nothing against him, but he has been in the fire service. He's well-known here in East Bethel and through Anoka County. Maybe you pay what you get for, you get
Well,
what
do
you
you
pay
have
for
someone better
sometimes.
to recommend?
I didn't know this was coming up. If you honestly want me to look, I will get you probably a couple tomorrow. There's no way he's the only one. There are many people that do consultations.
Well, all I said was I looked online.
Right.
I didn't.
But again, there's other, I guarantee there's other places. I will get them to you whether or not you approve this or not. I guess my issue is that you hired a fire chief to do everything that they're reviewing here is in the fire chief's.
You understand, the whole point is to have an independent party look at it.
And-
As independent you can get. I mean, it would be great if we could hire someone from you know, way far away, had, you know, similar credentials, but no knowledge of anybody, you know, that would be even more objective, I suppose, but
And who hired the fire chief? Who was on that board? Tim Harrington, Wanda, and what, the old chief, right?
yeah, Mark Descharme, was Jack part of that too?
Jack too.
Yeah,
Good old boys club again.
well, that's nobody who's sitting up here, though.
No, it's not. It's not. I appreciate what you're doing. I also think if we don't have trust in our fire chief and what's going on there, maybe you put it up for application again and then hire someone to come in and
Well,
actually
the first
do
thing
the-
you do is you find out from as independent a party as you can find if there is a reason for concern. I mean,
Well,
at least that's the way I think. I don't speak for everybody up here, just myself.
You do well at that. Hiring someone to do the interviewing instead of, you know, hiring from within, and a good old boys club might have taken care of some of this, and it's
Yeah,
not
but
too
that's
late.
before any of us, well,
You
before
like to
four out
overspeak
of five.
everybody.
That's before 4 out of 5 of us were sitting here.
Exactly, but you're here now.
I
You're
know,
here now.
I know, and now we're doing due diligence, trying to get an independent opinion on how things are going.
I would look at that independent opinion before you did it then, because
Well-
you might be just throwing away more money. Granted, 10,000 isn't a lot. I
No.
mean, you guys budgeted 8,000 for animal control, and 10,000 is really nothing. But you might get what you pay for.
Well,
And
if you have other parties to recommend, again, whether we go ahead with it or not, I'll commit to talking to other parties.
I will do that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.
Whether you signed up or not, is anyone else interested in participating in the public forum? Hearing none, we'll close the public forum and move on to item 6 on our agenda, the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda, and I would like to pull item D as in dog.
I'll second that, and I was gonna pull the same one.
Okay, I'm gonna pull item A. Just one question.
Oh, and item C, I had a couple questions. It's on the Maynard Peterson Park.
Okay,
Hey, wanna pull item B too?
yeah, let's just pull the whole thing while we're at it. Okay, so motion's been made to eviscerate the consent agenda. So, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, to approve the consent agenda as amended, which would be basically only approving item B on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none heard. Okay, so item A, simple question. Under bills to pay, $12,297 for software licensing for Anoka County Fire Protection Council. That strikes me as an extraordinarily high expense for software. And I'm gonna assume that it's a countywide emergency management system and that it's actually a great bargain. But,
Mr. Mayor, the public safety data system is extremely expensive.
yeah. That's really what it is, isn't it? Yeah. Again, once again, it's handy to have the former chairman of the Anoka County Board of Commissioners as your city administrator to answer such questions.
Matt, how many times do we pay that? Is that once a year or twice a year?
It's dependent on how often you have to update that software, and I'm not sure the exact length of time on that, but I have not seen this expense come through before, so I'm hoping it's not every
Yeah.
year.
Once?
But
Hopefully.
I do know that there were updates to the public safety data system that there was an update for many years before that, so It's a costly proposition.
When you get a look at all the software licensing expenses the city eats, you realize the term being nibbled to death by 1,000 ducks, where that term comes from, because it's 10,000 here, 5,000 there, 20,000 there, and pretty soon you're, eating saltine crackers, and ramen noodle,
What I will say, Mr. Mayor and council, is that the prior system, everyone had their independent systems.
Yeah.
And they would input data, and then a different, whether it's fire or police or whomever, sheriff would show up, and they'd all have different information. And so this gets everybody on the same sheet of music. And if it comes to prosecution, there's clarity then in the prosecution. However, it doesn't not come without a price tag, so.
Yep, that's a fact. Okay, so I'll move to approve item A of the consent agenda.
A second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Before we move on to the next thing, I want to thank Mr. Tom Lunan is filling in tonight for our normal city attorney, Eric Larson, who was otherwise engaged. And we want to thank you for coming here and providing city attorney services to us.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll go to item C on the consent agenda, which was pulled by Mr. DeRoche, Councilmember DeRoche, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, I just had a couple questions. Apparently the Minnesota Smoke had the original contract last year for the ball fields, and now a fast pitch team is doing it. City's put a lot of money into that park and the ball fields, but what's that going to do for any of the locals that want to use it? What's the priorities? If a lot of families over in Coon Lake Beach or whatever come over on a Sunday, have a picnic and want to play ball, well, what happens if this club shows up and says, well, you get out of here, we're under contract?
Oh, I think the terms would be the same as what was under the Smoke.
Well, I don't care who's got it. I'm more concerned about the residents that are paying tax money to maintain the park and fix it up. And yes, this isn't a freebie, but part of the reason for having it is get people outside and playing ball. And
We have item 9 there is right of entrance, kind of explains that they have a non-exclusive right to use it. They can't prevent access to the athletic field by other users, but there's a scheduling process that occurs for that. But again, this is just an assumption of the agreement by the new entity, and just kind of transferring it from one to the other.
So if we feel the need to tighten it up one way or the other, then,
we can do that.
yeah.
That's fine. I
So,
just know that in the past, there's been issues.
Yeah.
so is this any different than when the other clubs use the booster fields over here, or anything else?
I cannot speak to if it's different than that. We can certainly get Nate to weigh in on that. I can send an email.
I was just
Email to
curious.
the council members if there's concerns on that.
Yeah, because I know the other ball clubs use those fields as well.
I would say the term non-exclusive use says that it's not just theirs.
Yeah.
All right, well, that being said, I approve C.
You make a motion to approve item C of the consent agenda, right?
Sure.
Sure.
I'll second.
And seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Okay,
Mr. Mayor?
item D. Oh,
Mr. Mayor, if I can, Nate is watching the council meeting here this evening and just texted me. He said the contract is for weeknight use, no daytime or weekends. So from that standpoint, it kind of, maybe the public would find more use for it on weekends than they would during the weekday perhaps, but we try and accommodate in that regard, so.
Way to go,
Okay.
Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
thank
Thanks,
you,
Nate.
Nate.
That's Nate.
Okay. So item D. Brian, you pulled that.
Yeah, resolution supporting HF 5189 and SF 5309. We haven't talked about these in any meetings before, and whether these come out or not, it could be kind of a big thing for the city. So I just want to address this to the public, and Mr. Look, if you could kind of give us a little synopsis on this. And I know that some residents I've seen have had questions of if this were to go forward, would any residents have to hook up to it? I assume that assumption is no, but, and maybe too soon to ask that question, as this is very, very, very early in this process. But this is a concern that residents have had and had with the previous sewer system that went in. So I'll kind of turn it over to you, Mr. Look.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. House File 5189 was a file presented by Representative Scott, and Senate File 5309 was Senator Cal Barr. And both of them, the House file and the Senate companion, are a $10.5 million ask from the state of Minnesota in their bonding bill. It's not bonding, I want to clarify, it's not bonding that the city is taking on, it's state bonding. And essentially what that is the genesis of this was there's the East Bethel Elementary and Cedar Creek Elementary that have interest in hooking up to city utilities, water and sewer services. We have the main trunk line running by on 65. However, there is not a water feature or a water tower or wells in the area that could hook up those elementary schools at this point. So essentially this is an ask from the state that they've participated in the past for clean water scenarios and infrastructure projects such as this. And I don't, to the best of my knowledge, know if East Bethel has ever asked for bonding bills in the past for projects such as this. However, you've often heard me refer to it as opium or other people's money. And the state currently right now has many bills in for very similar projects just like this project. And so from a public to public type of project, in other words, city being public, school being public, the school has has well and septic right now, from what I understand by the administrator there. The septic system is going to need replacement at some point, so there is a kind of a pending cost there that they don't necessarily want to invest in that if there's going to be city sewer and water available. So this is an ask from the state. We'll be certainly able to testify down there. Mayor, yourself, and anyone else who wants to testify can testify on these things, and essentially tell the story of close proximity to decommissioned landfill and the benefits of this sort of project. So basically what this is just a resolution supporting these, so we can present that to the committees of jurisdiction. It'd be the Capital Investment Committee or the Bonding Committee, that the city is 100% behind this.
So, and again, very, very early, if it was awarded at all, but if it does get awarded and things move forward, is there any cost to the city, any cost to the residents for this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We checked with our engineer to try and get the best possible estimate on this, so I do not believe that there's any difference in cost short of finding some sort of unsuitable soils or something. But essentially it would cover a water tower, a water treatment facility, the piping to get it to the schools, and it should cover the entire cost if their estimate is accurate. Yes.
Okay, so no cost.
Hopefully no cost, yes, that's the goal. I mean, it's hard to take an estimate and say this is gonna be rock solid when a bid comes in at that point, but I would feel very comfortable in saying this would be...
The goal is to have no cost.
The goal is to have no cost. This would definitely be the lion's share, if not all of it, yes.
Okay. Bob, you had some questions?
Questions and statements. I guess I have a little bias because I was around when the sewer water came in, and I was the one that voted no against it. Again, residents were told, don't worry, if you don't hook up, you don't pay. It's not gonna be any cost to the city. Put us in 70 million in the hole with everything, and eventually Met Council said they gave us a break, but whatever. I just don't, well, my first question is, did the city engineer look at those papers, or that folder that I dropped off that shows the force main, has all the specs, what it's slated to hold? I mean, it would be kind of a shame to say we're gonna run it in the force main and then have it be too small. Mr. Ronning, who at the time was on the council, he's really good with the numbers on this whole thing, so you kinda know what I'm talking about, right, Tom? But anyway, to think that for 10.5 million, that they're going to put this in the ground, and, you know, hey, I'm for schools, I'm for education, I'm for kids. However, we're still paying one heck of a bill on the last sewer water project that wasn't gonna cost anybody money. And to put this stuff, once, the old city administrator had a saying, he said, once the camel's got his nose under the tent, the rest comes after. And once you get into this and start on this road, you don't just stop and turn around, because the momentum is going so fast and so hard. And then I don't really care if people don't like me for my opinion on this or not. I really don't, because with what we went through for 13 years, and we're still going through it, to do this, I think that it's something, and like, I gotta agree with, Brian kinda stole my thunder, we haven't had a work meeting or any real discussion with a lot of facts and figures, and unless somebody can put it in writing that it's not gonna cost us money, I can honestly say I won't go for it. I need a whole lot more information, and some of this could be time sensitive, you know, I mean, our legislature, they work so much and then they go home and enjoy themselves, and hopefully they pick it up again next fall.
Mr. Look,
Yes.
if this was awarded to us and we say, no, we don't want it, is there any cost to give it back, to turn it down?
No, the state wouldn't let the bonds at that point for that amount, or they would reduce the letting of bonds by that amount if we chose not to move forward. The one thing I will say is we had a discussion with the engineer in the staff meetings on Tuesday concerning this. That was the main question that came up. Can the force main handle additional hookups? And the response was indeed it can. There is capacity in there. So there is documents that he's come up with, kind of putting together estimates on it, and I'm having to trust that that is an accurate estimate on the amount. But it is, I will also say, it is being built with additional capacity to it, such that, as you'll recall in prior discussions at the corner of Sims and 65, we're kind of talking about a commercial industrial park area. This would also feed that park area with water and sewer service. So to the north of that, what we have is a park that is couple acre maybe lots, and this would be much smaller, more dense commercial industrial, which brings in jobs to the community and everything else. But those type of entities require city sewer and water services. So it's kind of building in anticipation of that as well with the state's dollars.
Well, did the city engineer, did he discuss how much trouble we had with the wells that were put in down in the sewer water district? Or how many times we had to bore around to try and find, between the manganese and rust, what else was it?
Radium.
Radium. And,
Yep.
I mean, we've got 2 wells down there now. We use one's sitting there. But I don't, I mean,
Help me out with something, will you? Just from where I'm sitting looking at this, the fundamental difference is that when the city, and one of the reasons we wanted Bob on the city council when the changes happened last year was because he was the one person out of 5 people who voted against the city sewer and water project, which did indebt the city greatly. $13.7 million as of the end of 2023 is what the residents of East Bethel have paid for that thus far. $13.7 million, and those numbers were from Mike Jaworski, who was here earlier. And we've got a long way to go yet before it's paid off. But from where I'm sitting, if they had gone out for a state type of bonding, and get money from the state using OPM, other people's money, that was exactly what they didn't do. They put all the debt onto the residents of East Bethel.
general obligation bonds.
Yeah, general obligation bonds on the residents of East Bethel. And general obligation means we don't care if we have to take your house and sell it, they're gonna be paid.
Well,
That is
and
the
they also
most
tried the
rigorous
BAB
bonding.
bonds, Build America bonds,
Yeah.
and that didn't work out so good either.
So, but am I missing something here? Because that I see as the fundamental difference of the approach we're talking about here versus what was done before. And for me, it's as different as conduit bonding for Nexus as opposed to what they did in 2011. 2010, actually, they let the bonds. Fall of 2010, after the election.
Well, with the outlay of what it cost for that 3/4 of a mile square down on 22 and 65, for what it costs to do that, I don't see how they, for 10.5 million, I don't see how they can do the one on Sims and 65 and feed the schools and do the lift stations, and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
But I do.
And I think we need to really take
I
a look.
do trust Craig Yocum as an engineer, as a city engineer, I do. And he was around back then, and he's still there. And if he gave the estimates, and I trust Matt too, that you laid things out clearly. So it may be surprising, but it's like that capstone traffic study. I was shocked that they came up with the conclusions that,
It's not gonna have an effect.
yeah, I was dumbfounded. But I talked to the CEO of the company, and she assured me she had personally gone through all the numbers, and she's a licensed civil engineer with a lot of experience, and what grounds do I have to doubt her?
Well, Craig Yocum wasn't involved in, Bolton and Mink was, with the engineering of that project.
No, but I
Craig
mean,
Yocum came on after the fact.
really, because he's been
He
working
didn't
with the city
design
for
the
a
sewer
long
water.
time.
We fired Bolton and Mink.
You fired them or hired them?
No, we fired them
Oh.
when we took office.
Was Bolton Mink the city engineer?
Yes. I believe they were.
Because
Because Hankinson Anderson was doing city engineering a long time for East
Yeah.
Bethel.
I thought it was.
But anyway, this is something
Anyway,
that we
Anyway,
definitely
but I was
need to put in
asking
a
a
meeting.
question, am I confused about it, or do I understand it correctly, that there is a fundamental difference between the way it was approached before and the way we're talking about doing it now? The OPM issue, other people's money issue.
I'll bite my tongue on this one.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay,
if I can say, we did look at the price of what a water tower will be, what a water treatment plant will be, how much the piping will be, lift stations and all that's been taken into account on this.
oh,
So there's city-owned land on the east side of 65 by the post office that's kind of been identified as a possible location for this, which would
Yeah.
save costs in doing it. So a lot of thought has gone into it. Nate's worked very closely with Craig on this and myself on trying to come up with a solid figure that we can
yeah, I
present.
do have confidence in all the people involved, including Nate, yeah. So-
Aaron, In the ordinances, does it say anything about mandatory hookups?
That's a state statute 429. If a sewer water goes by your business or residence, you can be forced to hook up.
You can be.
And that was beat into us by Mark Veerling, who was the attorney at the time.
Section 74-123 looks like the title is mandatory connection to city systems. It shall be unlawful for any person to install or for any real property to be connected to a private waterworks system intended to provide water for human consumption, or for any person to install or for any real property to be connected to a private sanitary sewer system, except in cases where the city waterworks or sanitary system is not available to a property. The city administrator shall refer all questions of availability to the city engineer. The city engineer shall make a recommendation if either of the city water or sanitary sewer systems is available to a premises, whether requesting or requiring installation or connection. Service availability shall be presumptively demonstrated by written notice to connection provided to the property owner if the city confirming the availability of municipal water and or sanitary sewer systems adjacent to the property's address. So that sounds to me as like it's mandatory if it's available.
Well, it sounds to me like that's if a resident is asking to hook up. State law, and we lost 4 businesses down in the sewer water district because of that, because of the mantra, don't worry, if you don't hook up, you don't pay. Once it was put in, they couldn't afford it, and they got ran out of town. Even though some took advantage of a low-interest loan program, some couldn't do that.
The city engineer shall make a recommendation if either of the city waterworks or sanitary systems is available to a premises, either requesting and or requiring installation or connection. I guess we could ask for a legal opinion on whether that requires it or not.
Well, no, whether the city does, I mean, this is a state statute. And it was beat in our heads because we had threats of lawsuits and it kept coming up. Well, 429 says that the state says if it comes by, you're gonna hook up if they want you to.
Unless you're in a charter city. Charter cities have different scenarios on that. But, I mean, the focus on this tonight, I think, is looking forward. If we want to expand a commercial industrial sector of the city, and it needs city sewer services, if you want to connect the school district, and it needs city sewer and water services, you will, as a city, pay, by the estimate, $10.5 million to make that happen. The issue here is there's 2 bills that have been dropped where, if funded, the state pays that instead of us at some point in the future. So, yes, things that happened in the past, and there's a $15 million outstanding bill. This is 10.5, it doesn't swap the difference. However, in the future, at least you're not gonna be eating another 10.5 million on top of the 15 you're already paying.
Right, and that was the question I had. When you take a look at it and try and understand exactly what this bill says, it's basically telling our residents that we're going to be, you know, supporting this bond or this water tower and program. They shouldn't have to pay a dime, period.
Right.
That makes it much easier to swallow, as you can understand, fully knowing that in the near future, we might need a facility exactly like that they might be able to pay for the state now, and that city our city would not have to inquire that bill 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road.
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand that.
Well, as long as, you know, the build it and they will come, I've seen it too much.
Well, this
And
is,
I guess that's stuck in my head.
yeah, this is primarily for the school at this point. We don't have any businesses that are hooking up or anything. I mean, that's all prospective possibilities in the future that may or may not happen. This is strictly for the school. We have a school letter here from the
Kirsten?
Yep,
Yeah,
Karsten Ashton,
Karsten.
the superintendent, saying that they are very supportive of these bills and desperately want to hook up. I think that they understand that there's replacement costs to their existing system that they would rather not bear, given the problems, some of the challenges they've seen with that system, so.
So it exceeds the 10.5, who's fiscally responsible for that, us?
If it exceeds the 10.5, your options are you can decide not to take the money, or B, you can go to the school district and say, we need some contribution from you.
So in other words, sorry folks, but we gotta raise another levy.
Or like he said, you say, we're not gonna do it.
If the bids come in too high, you can decide to punt.
Okay,
Well, you
let's
gotta have
call
two-
the
you gotta have
question,
two-
okay?
You gotta have two sides of the discussion.
Right, and we're going on, and so, let's call the question. The item is to approve or deny the resolution 2024-32, supporting House File 5189 and Senate File 5309.
We'll make a resolution,
Make a motion?
make a motion to support House File 5189 and Senate File 5309.
Motion has been made. Anybody seconding?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve Resolution 2024-32. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
We got any discussion here, folks?
Oh, I thought we already had that.
No, I was gonna suggest we table it, get more information.
Didn't we call the question?
Procedurally speaking, there was no motion on the table, so there was no question that was called.
Okay.
The motion has now been made, so now, under procedure, there should be discussion unless if the question were to be called now, then it would go back to the motion that is on the table. So there, at the time that the mayor called the question, there was no question to call. There was no motion that had been made. Now we do have a question, we have a motion. So if the question were called now, it would go immediately to the vote because we have a motion. But when the mayor had called the question, there was no motion, so there
All
was
right,
no
I
question
got
to
you
be called.
now. So I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
The record show that was Councilmember DeRoche voting in the negative. Okay, so that completes the consent agenda at long last. Item number 7, new business, commission, association, and task force reports. First with the planning commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Might I catch you by surprise there?
No, I was waiting for Matt to get this up so we can get moving. On February 12th, 2024, Planning Commissioner Joe Ryder submitted a resignation to members of the City Council, which created an open position on the Planning Commission. City staff advertised the opening and received 2 letters of interest or resumes. The letters of interest were attached or are attached for your review. The Planning Commission conducted interviews of both candidates at its March 26, 2024 meeting. At the conclusion of the interviews, the commission voted to recommend the appointment of Eldon Holmes to fill the partial term expiring January 31st of 2026. The City Council should review the applicant's attached letters of interest and resume, consider the Planning Commission's recommendation, and consider appointing a candidate to fill the Planning Commission vacancy.
Does anybody want to make a motion regarding who to appoint to the planning commission, or to accept or reject the planning commission's recommendation, however you would like to put it?
I moved to put Diana Sanger on.
Motion's made to appoint Diana Singer to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Any discussion?
The reason for my thought is to put her on. I was at the Planning Commission meeting and I listened to the interviews, And in my opinion, Diana is very qualified for this position. Plus, I feel that we need new people on our planning commission and just to change things up and move forward in a better direction than we have been. That's my opinion.
Okay. Any other thoughts, discussion? Well, if not, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of appointing Diana Sanger to the Planning Commission of East Bethel, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Let the record show that Mr. Mundell, Councilmember Mundell, voted in the negative. IUP, item number 2, item number 7A2. IUP, interim use permit, commercial kennel, 625, 221st Ave Northeast. Andrew Bennick. Mr. Berg, you're on the
Yes.
hot plate again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bennix has requested that his application be withdrawn. However, the packet was already published, so I'm presenting you with the request to withdraw his application at this point. You can hear it if you want to, or we can withdraw it at his request.
I move to accept his, pulling his application.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Mr. Bennick's withdrawal of his application. I don't know a better way to say it than that, so that's what I said. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard.
I do just want to say I want to thank Mr. Bennick for trying to follow his passion.
Yeah.
I think in different circumstances, it would have been fantastic, but
His intent is to request an ordinance change, by the way, so you'll hear from him again.
okay.
That's
Okay.
good.
And he's got stick-to-itiveness too, which is useful. All right, item 3, variance setbacks, 18440 3rd Street Northeast. Aaron, again,
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor.
you're just the man of the hour here.
That's right. This is a variance request for a reduction in the front setback as well as the rear yard setback at 18440 3rd Street Northeast. The city received an application for a variance on this property, which is located in a rural residential zoning district of the Bear Hollow subdivision. The property owner requested a variance for the placement of a detached accessory structure closer to the front line than the principal building, and a reduction of the rear yard setback from 25 feet to 18 feet. Our zoning code states that no accessory building or detached private garage shall be located nearer the front line than the principal building, except when the lot is 3 acres or greater and the existing building is located a minimum of 200 feet from the lot line. The accessory building or detached garage may be located closer to the front line than the principal building if those apply. This property is 2.02 acres with the primary structure set back approximately 95 feet from the front lot line. This request does not meet the criteria set forth to allow for placement of the accessory structure closer to the road, so a variance is required. Additionally, the property is irregular shaped. It backs the Oak Grove city boundary line on the west. It has 2 ponds or wetlands on the south, as well as a septic tank and a drain field. And the well is located just north of the principal dwelling, making the placement of a proposed detached accessory structure behind the front foundation line of the principal dwelling impractical. The consideration of a variance requires the Planning Commission and the City Council consider the 3-factor test for practical difficulty. The first factor test is a test of reasonableness, which means the landowner would likely use the property in a practical way, but cannot do so under the rules of the ordinance. In this case, accessory structures, detached accessory structures are permitted as an accessory use in the rural residential zoning district. The second factor is that the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner. The uniqueness generally relates to the physical characteristics of a piece of property that is to the land and not the personal characteristics preferred by the landowner. In this case, the property is irregular shaped due to the city's west boundary and the curve of 3rd Street Northeast. As I mentioned, there are 2 ponds or wetlands on the south side of the property. The septic tanks and drain field are located to the south of the principal dwelling, and the well is located just to the north of the principal dwelling. The third factor is that a variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This factor is used to consider whether the resulting structure would be out of scale, out of place, or otherwise inconsistent with the surrounding areas. In this case, 7 of the 30 parcels in the Bear Hollow subdivision have detached accessory structures. 3 of those 7 are nearer the front line than the primary structure. The property also abuts 160 acres of land owned by the Minnesota DNR for forest land, so there will be no westerly neighbors. At the Planning Commission meeting, March 26, 2023, a public hearing was held and no one spoke except for the applicant. At the conclusion of the public hearing and discussion, the Planning Commission made a formal recommendation to the City Council to approve the variance by a 5-0 vote. The City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and consider approving the variance request for the placement of a detached accessory structure nearer the front line than the principal dwelling and a reduction of the standard rear yard setback from 25 to 18 feet with conditions presented in Resolution 2024-27.
Thank you, Aaron. I have a question for you.
Yes.
I watched that planning commission meeting, and my question is, if you don't mind, I'll just read it. Is it prudent to assume the DNR will be okay with a setback tighter than it normally would be when we didn't actually hear back from them?
So my conversation, I did send a formal letter for a variance request to
Right,
the Minnesota
right.
DNR. I did have communication with a planner from
Yep.
the Minnesota DNR.
Yep.
I submitted all of the application materials along with all the information you heard tonight. She indicated to me that if they had an issue with it, that I would hear back from her
Right.
or someone at the DNR
Yep.
by the planning commission meeting, which was on Tuesday. I talked to her the Friday before. We heard nothing, and I've had no follow-up since then from
So
the
you're
DNR regarding this.
comfortable with it?
I'm assuming that she's following her word and that if there was an issue, she would have reached out to one of us.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Yep.
On the other thing was what,
We gotta move to bring it up.
I'm asking him a question.
Yeah, I know, but to discuss it, we have to make a motion and second and bring it up for discussion and then.
Even though I'm asking a question and follow up to his presentation?
Well, I guess.
I don't know, I'm not a
Rules of
parliamentarian.
order.
I'll
So
do whatever you guys say.
Sure, it's really a procedural question, and obviously this being my first meeting, I don't know how you guys have done it. Some cities will do the discussion and then bring the motion. You guys have done that on some of those consent items. If normally, generally speaking, the practice is to do the motion and then have the discussion, but there's custom and usage. If it's, you guys had done it a little bit less formally, you can continue to do that. There's not the rules would say motion second and have the discussion.
Okay.
But your past practices can trump the standard rules of
Yeah,
procedure.
I don't know that we have a real practice, we kind of.
Then I would recommend,
with the
recommend
spirit.
having a motion on the table
Yeah.
and having the discussion then when the
No, I'll-
motion
I'll
is
ju-
before.
Generally, our practice is to have a motion.
Yeah, I'll just go with whatever you guys want. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
That's
To bring-
appropriate. That's appropriate, that you would make the motion, but. And Brian, are you seconding?
What's your motion?
Bring up the
The motion would be to approve
The variance.
the
the
variance.
accessory structure, variance for accessory structure in Bear Hollow.
Do we have a resolution number or something?
2024-27.
2024-27. That's interesting, at the bottom of the page, it shows 2023-27.
Yep, that's my error.
Oh,
The next page has your resolution with the proper number on it.
there we go. Okay, so we've got a motion
I'll second.
made and seconded to approve resolution number 2024-27, granting a variance for the placement of a structure, et cetera. Now, if I could ask you one other question.
Absolutely.
what are the driveway plans referred to in that resolution?
Yeah, if you'll look at the screen, I've brought up the applicant's site plan. As you can see, here is the existing house. Here's the existing driveway.
And a second driveway is okay in that
In a rural
zoning?
residential, we
Yeah.
permit second driveways.
Okay,
This actually all came about when the applicant came in to apply for his second driveway and discovered that his proposed building isn't gonna meet the standards either. So that, he
okay,
withdrew his application for a driveway, applied for the variance, so we're doing the chicken and egg scenario here.
yep, okay, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
Well, it kinda answers my question on the second driveway.
I looked that one up, so tried to get educated before I showed up here.
I was over by the property today and I took a look at it, and that indeed is the only place that a guy could put a detached
Yeah.
accessory building. And what I've seen over there, that it won't interfere with anything. I think it's a good choice. It's my opinion.
Okay, well, we have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving Resolution 2024-27, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Next item on the agenda, item 7A4, variance, second driveway, 2910 Buchanan Street Northeast. Once again, we're graced with the presence of Mr. Berg.
You're gonna get a healthy dose of me tonight.
I could say something about a little bit goes a long way, but far be it from me to do such a thing.
I've reduced my staff reports as much as possible to get the necessary information to you. All right.
We appreciate you, Aaron.
On February 22nd, 2024, the city of East Bethel received a variance application from Scott Flipson, the property owner at 20910 Buchanan Street, for the construction of a second driveway / access to his parcel off of Buchanan Street Northeast. In 2021, Mr. Flipson was permitted to construct a detached accessory structure on his property. Due to the placement of the primary residence on the north side of the parcel and its proximity to the side lot line, Mr. Flipson constructed the detached accessory structure south of the primary residence. The layout of the home placed the garage on the north side of the house, away from the new detached accessory structure. This orientation places the driveway, the existing driveway, nearly 75 feet away from the newly constructed detached accessory structure. Adding to the existing driveway to get to the detached accessory structure could take up a majority of the front yard. A driveway that provides direct access to the second garage, detached accessory structure, could look better than an extension that runs parallel to the city right-of-way through the front yard. On March 19th of 2021, when Mr. Flipson applied for his detached accessory structure permit, he indicated that there would be no second driveway. Our city code, section 10, general development regulations, subdivision 15 states that properties in the R1 and the R2 and the Coon Lake district are allowed one access from the street. This property is located in an R1 district. There are two other parcels in the Hidden Haven Country Club estates that appear to have second driveways. A historical review of the GIS aerial data provided information that one of them did exist prior to 2008 when the ordinance revision occurred. The consideration of a variance requires the consideration of the three-factor test of practical difficulty. Easy for me to say. In this case, it could be argued that the practical difficulties can be partially met. Therefore, alternative findings of fact have been included for your consideration. The first factor is a test of reasonableness, which means that the landowner would likely use the property in a practical way but cannot do so under the rules of the ordinance. It does not mean that the land cannot be put to use in any reasonable way whatsoever without the variance. In this case, the property owner is requesting a second driveway to access a detached accessory structure is a reasonable request, as adequate ingress and egress are necessary for the structure intended to store vehicles and other personal items. Or alternatively, the denial of the variance to place a second driveway on the property does not deny the landowner of reasonable use of the property, as a detached accessory structure, and subsequent access are not a requirement of development standards of a primary residence. The second factor is that the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner. The uniqueness generally relates to the physical characteristics of a piece of property that is to the land and not the personal characteristics or preferences of the landowner. In this case, the primary residence was constructed on the north side of the lot. The layout of the home placed the garage on the north side of the house away from the detached accessory structure. The primary driveway is located 75 feet from the newly constructed detached accessory structure. Or alternatively, an alternate access exists by way of connecting the approved existing driveway to the new detached accessory structure. The third factor is that the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This factor is used to consider whether the resulting structure would be out of scale, out of place, or otherwise inconsistent with the surrounding area. In this case, as I said, there are two other properties in the subdivision that have second driveways. A driveway that provides direct access to the second garage could look better than an extension that runs parallel to the city right-of-way through the front yard. Or alternatively, the property is located in an R1 zoning district with smaller lot minimums, decreasing the distance between driveways. And of the 61 properties in the subdivision, one has a second driveway that existed prior to the zoning prohibition. On March 26, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and reviewed the application information. There were multiple neighbors who spoke in both opposition and support of the request. Concerns ranged from property values, precedent, potential business usage, extra vehicles, and a deterrent for future home buyers. Support from 3 neighbors were voiced, and the applicant presented a document with 24 additional signatures in support. By a 3-2 vote, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the variance request for the placement of a second driveway at 20910 Buchanan Street. The City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve or deny the variance request for the second driveway as presented in Resolution 2024-28A or 2024-28B.
Does anyone want to move either resolution before we get into a discussion?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2024-28A, I believe it would be, to grant the variance.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Do we have discussion?
Yeah, I got a couple concerns. On one hand, I mean, I look at it and it makes sense to extend the driveway or to finish it, because it doesn't. But on the other hand, it's not a situation that's topographical, it's not, there's a river running through it, there's not natural land, whatever, and what I'm a little concerned about is people going and putting their houses and then down the road say, well, we'll just get a variance. When in the initial planning, maybe that should have been taken into consideration, that this is what we're gonna do. Because we've been kind of doing this, granting these variances, and as it's going along, at some point, we're gonna say no, and somebody's gonna, well, wait a minute, you just did, for the crying out loud, how many variances because they decided to put their building in after the fact, and now I'm trying to do something and you're telling me no. I mean, the planning commission was a 3-2 vote, so that tells you it wasn't unanimous.
After a lot of discussion, too.
Not a discussion. And then the other side of me says, well, it does make sense to finish the driveway and make it look right. I mean, when you're talking pervious, non-pervious surface and meeting those standards, and you don't want it to look messed up. So, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, this was one of the ones that we drove over by and took a good look at. Gentleman's got a very nice house. Unfortunately for him and how it was set up, garage is on the wrong side. Look at the neighbors, you can clearly see what could be. Now, to put a driveway through the middle of someone's yard, that's kind of tough. I drove by it the first time I went there. I didn't notice it. I thought it was another house set back in there. It's not like there's junk anywhere or anything like that. It's just a very sharp-looking house with a sharp-looking garage next to it, with a giant concrete pad. You can see where he's been driving.
Well, isn't that the one, if I'm thinking the same one, where he had a driveway in and the city made him take it out and put grass in? And it was obvious he was driving back and forth on the grass, and so that's why he decided he wanted to finish that driveway out? Is that the same guy?
Sounds very familiar.
I have no idea.
I was at the last planning commission meeting. You remember, Jim?
I don't remember hearing that they made him tear it out.
No,
Plant
you're
grass.
thinking right.
Yeah, I didn't.
You're right, Bob.
I think that in this case, we actually stopped construction on this driveway. It was
I was
obvious.
gonna put down class 5 or something
It
and,
was obvious to the building official who was out there that this was being formed up to be poured all the way to the street. I delivered the stop work order to stop it at least at the property line at this point, to make sure that we were in compliance with the zoning code. And so then the contractor backed up the forms and poured what you see here on the screen. Now, our ordinance, when we issue permits for detached accessory structures, there is limited to 0 language in there, which we request how many trips are gonna be used per month. If this is just simply for snowmobile storage and a boat to take out every other weekend, it may not destroy the vegetation and become a high traffic use, as you may see here. I think there's planks and dirt where grass should be. So just because we approve a detached accessory structure, there's no indication as to how frequently it will be used. There is a question on the application, as I have in the packet, to request that, is there an intended driveway? The applicant in this case said no. If the applicant would have said yes, that would have triggered us to review this from the zoning perspective and say, second driveways are not allowed in the R1 zoning district. You may want to reconsider that before you build your detached accessory structure. So could that be done a little differently at the community development level or the building permit level, potentially? That doesn't reel this one in from 2021, so.
if I could ask a couple of questions, what is that's to the north, right, of the driveway, the primary driveway?
Yes.
The white, looks like crushed stone. No, on the property just to the north of the blacktop
Right here.
driveway.
This is
Yeah,
also cement.
That's cement?
It's been poured cement in addition to the driveway. The addition to the primary driveway, the existing first driveway.
Huh.
Yeah, does he have a patio off that side of his house?
I don't know that for a fact.
Looks like
There
a
is
regular
another-
lines.
There is another accessory building here on the north side of the property. I don't know if this is for easier access or maybe they needed additional parking.
But you can see the edges look uneven.
Yeah, well, it's graphically split that way. Let me pull up the aerial.
As opposed to the newer driveway, clean lines.
Well, to make it look right, I mean, you might as well, I don't have a laser, but if you kind of look between where the cement pad, that's a heck of a pad coming on the front of his garage. But if you look between the pad and the street,
Yeah, that's better.
it's dirt, so I mean,
Yeah, that's much clearer.
Yeah, I think when the county has these aerials done, they're from probably 1,500 to 2,000 feet above, and then we get pixelated
Yeah.
data back, so it's
Okay.
not perfectly clean. But
okay, go down to where the building is now then,
well, I have to switch years.
or the driveway.
It doesn't exist in that.
Oh.
Didn't
there
exist
it
in
is.
that one. I just know that 2020 is the cleanest data we have, the cleanest vision.
But that answers a question I had, because it looked like a bunch of crushed stone. because
Looks
of the
in this-
irregular edges,
looks in
but
this view
anyway.
Like the apron of the garage continued.
Well, that, my next question is, was there a permit for that driveway?
There was-
Apron and driveway?
The first,
The one that stops 15, 20 feet?
no, there
before the
was
street?
not.
There wasn't.
That would have been included in the application packet, or it would have been
Well,
required
when was that put in?
when the detached accessory structure was being built or finalized.
Without a permit then?
In some cases, when we accept a building permit for a structure, that's why we ask for the drive, is there gonna be a driveway?
Well, this is different than what, maybe it's my memory that's different, but I thought at the planning commission meeting, the intent was to put down class 5 or whatever you wanna call it, a gravel, a porous driveway, so to speak. And instead, because that wasn't okay with the city, this showed up, but that's what my question was, well, like Bob is saying, it looks odd without the extension to the street, to have an apron and driveway and then it's dirt. But where did the driveway come from to begin with? That was the question I had when I looked at
All I
it.
can answer, Mr. Mayor, is when I was out there and my knowledge of concrete, this was being framed for a driveway when we requested the stop work order be done,
But there was no permit to do a driveway.
not a permit for a driveway.
Was the concrete there?
The truck was not there yet. It was being formed.
But it was formed, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys can, do whatever you wanna do. I like to be obliging. What I don't like is, the old saying, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it's to ask for permission. And that's an old one, and see it all the time. See it out where I live.
That was an
It's just-
insinuation that was made at the planning commission meeting, was why didn't you apply for the driveway permit at the time? Was it because you planned on doing it, but you didn't think that the city would go ahead and do it?
Yeah.
But you're not inside the guy's head, you don't know what he's gonna do.
Well, I think a
Yeah, I'm not-
garage
I'm not-
door is a good indication.
What's that?
A garage door on that building is a good indication what he's gonna do with it,
All right,
Like I mentioned, we don't ask how many trips a week. Is it gonna be a daily use? Is it gonna be just for weekend boat storage? Is it, we don't, that's
ha-
not a required question to answer.
Yeah, you have to assume it's gonna be accessible.
But also accessory use, which doesn't mean daily use.
No,
But according to our zoning, a crushed rock, what do you call it, class 5 or whatever you want to call it, driveway wouldn't have been acceptable either, right?
It would not, because he's on an improved street, so he would have
Yeah.
to improve the surface to match or be superior to what the right-of-way has.
well, so it's either he's concrete or it stays dirt. If it stays dirt, he's gonna be more of a hazard, cause he's gonna be if he drives through it in the rain, it's gonna be mud, right? So then he puts mud on the street.
So this is also as a result of a pending code enforcement case. So there is neighborhood
What does that
complaints.
mean? I'm sorry.
There are neighborhood complaints about the second driveway.
So elaborate if you would.
So we've had a neighbor in the neighborhood call in and lodge a formal complaint that the applicant is in violation of the code because second driveways are not permitted, and that the continued use is making this a driveway. It's compacting the soil, it's not vegetation, it doesn't meet the zoning standard. So then our response is we investigate the complaint, send a letter to the homeowner if it's substantiated, and then as a result, we received a call from the applicant, or in this case, the homeowner, who then now requested what are my options? Option A is we remove it, you don't do daily use, you put in a driveway across your front yard for the extension, or you request a variance to the zoning code standard of a driveway.
Aaron, are there other driveway code violations in that neighborhood?
As I said in my staff report, you can see that there are two properties with second driveways.
One of which
This
predates.
one
the-
predates 2008, and that's why it's allowed to remain gravel. Otherwise, it should have been paved if it were to the standard after 2008. There is a existing driveway up here, similar to the scenario that the applicant is dealing with. This is not grass. However, it's not paved either, so it's just getting regular use, and it's getting compacted, and there's no vegetation. And then down the street, I know from the applicant's property, we have a driveway width standard of 24 feet, and a couple of these driveways are likely beyond the standard of 24 feet.
It's real hodgepodge, huh?
It is. And
I was
that's-
curious, are there covenants in, in these neighborhoods like adjacent to a golf course and stuff like that? Are there covenants in the neighborhood itself that are even more restrictive
Yeah,
than ordinances?
Yes. Ironically, in the Hidden Haven neighborhood, there are
Like you have to wear khaki pants all the time or
30,
something?
30-year covenants, actually, which I think came around in 2007. One of the covenants, although it doesn't specifically address driveways, it addresses the number of detached accessory structures that a property is allowed to have. And in the covenant, it only allows for one. And that was a concern of someone who called in prior to the public hearing, was that this property already had a detached accessory structure. Why did the city permit a second one to be constructed when it's a violation of the covenant? However, city code doesn't take into consideration covenants, because covenants are private agreements between the developer and the landowner or the homeowner. So we do not enforce covenants. We enforce city code, and by the amount of property here and the size of the previous detached accessory structure, this property would be allowed to have what it has today by city code.
For covenants to be enforced, it's a civil issue.
That's correct. And there are many pages of the covenants for this Hidden Haven.
Really?
It's very lengthy.
So Aaron, you said that you had a phone call, a complaint about this. Do they come in and fill out a complaint form?
Yes, the complainant back in 2001, when this was being constructed, is the same complainant that's called us numerous times. And then after council requested a change to the formal process, he was willing to fill out a formal complaint and did so.
Did you say 2001?
Yeah, when the construction of this was happening. So then the applicant remedied it by planting grass. And then as the continued use happened, it became more apparent to the neighborhood that this was being used daily, and then lodged another complaint.
Well, I think we've beat this thing to death. Might as well vote and see
Oh,
what
come on, take another couple swipes at it. Any further discussion?
Yeah, what point does common sense kick in?
Define your terms.
Common sense? Being able to think rationally, it's not black and white, be able to reason things out, you know what I mean?
And so where does that land you on this particular issue?
I guess I'm, I'm for it. To stay like that is, I mean, you're either gonna be tracking mud out in the street, maybe create a safety problem,
Well,
along with not looking very good. It's unfortunate it couldn't be caught before that, but it's the way it goes, you know, you can't.
So council, if I can, without a solution, without a variance and/or the requirement of the driveway being extended across the front yard, eventually this will end up with citations and litigation because it's in violation of our city code.
Well, why go down that road? We got enough problems.
Well, with a formal complaint, that's our response. So we need to rectify that in some form, whether that is let the applicant know that he's not gonna be allowed a second driveway and has to come up with a solution, or B, we grant a variance to the code to allow for the second driveway to take care of the complaint side of things. Completely up to you.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, I just also would advise that in looking at the variance, while the other factors will be relevant, it really is that practical difficulty test in the findings. Because if the decision of the council, whether it's approval or denial, were to be challenging in the court, that's a standard that they're gonna look at. So the discussion that you're having is relevant certainly to the factors, but in making the determination, just ensure that we're making them based on those three criteria under the practical difficulties so they can hold up to scrutiny, because those are the standards and they're high level, so the other stuff that you're discussing about certainly can be relevant to it. But those are the standards that are gonna be the most important, if any decision, again, approval or denial, were to be challenged in the court.
Which is why I wrote the alternative answers to the first version, so that there is a finding of fact in either direction, because there may be support for partial in both cases. So if you choose to approve the variance, there is a finding of fact that could support it, and if you choose to deny, there is a finding of fact that would support a denial.
Well,
It's
doesn't that
completely up
just
to
throw a
you.
monkey wrench in the gears?
You're welcome.
Thanks for the clarity. I want to
Flipson.
say your name correctly. Is it
Scott Flipson.
Flipson, are you here? Do you want to maybe visit with us for a minute? Have you talked to the opposing neighbor?
He's actually a snowbird, he's in Arizona, so I
Oh,
have not.
okay.
Personally talked.
So you guys don't know each other in
And
particular?
part, if I remember right, part of his complaint was he's worried about me parking more cars in the driveway.
That was
Which
an
is a big
additional
issue.
concern
I
is
don't have any
that,
cars in the driveway, in my driveways right now. There's not a car in sight, they're all in the garage at night. And that little extra concrete pad, that you brought up before, that was put on before I put the garage up. It was there to park another car there.
Yeah,
Cause the driveway dropped off like about 3 feet on that edge, so I had to build it up and we just put a pad there.
Right, and the
It's
city
about
says you
extra
can't
car.
park on an unfinished
Right,
surface,
right,
right,
yeah.
right.
And then part of the deal, when I did get about this concrete pad here, I was framing up just to put class 5 down, figuring that would be okay. They said, no, it has to be grass. So I put grass down and I started driving over it 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and then
yeah.
that's where I got the complaints from. Cause it's starting to turn to mud over time. So, and then my other choice is going right through my front yard, 12-foot wide path, cut my yard in half. What's that gonna look like?
Not too good.
No.
But, you know, I may vote in opposition to this, and it's nothing personal,
No.
but I just have a real sense that it's ask forgiveness kind of situation. If it weren't for that other pad I asked about, I wondered about that, that's why I wondered about it. And if that was done without a permit, put all that concrete down, it's like, it suggests to me like,
At that point, I
You
didn't
know.
think he had to have a permit for a driveway. The driveway's there, I'm just adding a width to it, I'm not driving down the street, I'm still.
I mean, the
24 feet.
concrete piece to the north of your
Yeah, right here.
blacktop driveway, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm still within the 24 feet, and I thought I was just adding on to my driveway that's existing. I didn't know you had
But,
to take
yeah,
another permit for another
I know,
driveway.
I know, and all these things have a great explanation, I know, I know how life works, you know. But, anyway, that's why I don't like encouraging this kind of stuff, cause I see it all the time. And, you know, the old saying, another one is ignorance of the law is no excuse, you know, kind of thing. And I'm a libertarian, so I don't like a heavy-handed government, so I'm really in the crosshairs on this one, so. Anyway, I just wanted to ask
Well, I
you
was
about
looking
that.
for overall from the view from the city, people driving by, looking at a pack going all the way up to the street compared to a pack going across.
Yeah,
across
I
your
mean,
front yard.
Again, you
It's gonna
get to
look better.
Mr. DeRoche's point of common sense or practical, you know,
right.
it's, which looks better? 2 ruts going to a driveway or a finished driveway?
Yeah.
I think we'd all agree, finished driveway looks better, but it's also kind of rewarding the, you know, the way it was done, so. Anywho, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Scott?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those who want to support what Mr. Mundell referred to correctly as resolution number 2024-28A, granting a variance for the placement of a second driveway on the property located at 2910 Buchanan Street Northeast, say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say nay. Nay. That was Mr. Lewis who said nay. Again, we don't all have to agree on everything, guys. A point that's lost on some folks, apparently. Okay, item 7A5, interim use permit amendment for 1311 229th Ave Northeast. Aaron, have we worn you out yet?
Not yet, you got a couple more. All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, B&T Trucking is an over-the-road trucking company that's been in business for over 20 years, operating in East Bethel for +8. On May 10th, 2021, an IUP was issued by Resolution 2021-28 to allow the continued operation of the business to be in compliance with the new zoning code. Over the past 8 years, the property remains neat and orderly. Non-complacency has not been an issue. A street view photo of the property is attached for your review. As with any long-haul operation or the transportation vehicles accumulate miles and it becomes more cost effective to replace those vehicles than to continue to repair. The owners intend to sell the used fleet vehicles and replace them with new trucks and trailers as needed. Minnesota State Statute 168.27 requires motor vehicle dealer license be obtained by anyone engaging in the direct sale or lease of more than 5 vehicles within a 12-month period, new or used. A motor vehicle dealer license from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety requires city zoning verification. B&T Trucking is located, I won't give you the address, you already said that, but it is zoned light industrial. Section 48 of the Light Industrial Code identifies motor vehicle sales as a prohibited use. Section 4, applications and procedures, amendments. Holders of CUPs or IUPs may request proposed amendments to the permit at any time following the procedures for a new permit set forth in this chapter. No significant changes in the circumstances or scope of the permitted use shall be undertaken without approval of those amendments by the City Council. The city shall determine what constitutes a significant change. Significant changes include but are limited to hours of operation, number of employees, expansion of structures or premises, or operational modifications resulting in increased external activities and traffic and the like. The Planning Commission may recommend and the City Council may approve significant changes or modifications of a CUP or an IUP, including the application of additional or revised conditions. B&T Trucking is requesting an amendment of the conditions of their IUP to permit sales or transfer of vehicles in order to continue business operations. The existing IUP conditions from the original IUP are included for your review. I would point out that no more than 15 trucks or trailers may be stored on the property at any given time. On March 26, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing where no one spoke. After reviewing the information and discussion, the Planning Commission by a 5-0 vote formally recommended denial to the City Council for an amendment to the IUP to permit limited automobile sales at 1311 229th Avenue Northeast, a property zoned light industrial. The City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve or deny an IUP amendment as presented in Resolution 2024-29A or 2024-29B. If the request is approved, staff is requesting that the IUP agreement be amended to limit automobile sales to fleet-only vehicles owned by the business as identified in Resolution 2024-29A. An amendment agreement shall be fully executed no later than May 1st, if approved.
Thank you, Aaron. Anybody want to move? What the heck, I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2024-29B, denying an interim use permit amendment for B&T Trucking located at, et cetera.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Aaron, by denying this doesn't, that can't mean they can't post ads on like Facebook Marketplace or anything else. They just can't sell like a
Well,
car lot.
As you guys know, we are complaint-based code enforcement. So if for some reason, hypothetically, someone were to complain today, the fact that there's a for sale sign and there's vehicles for sale out in front of the business right now, we would take code enforcement action. Should they choose to not put the display sign out, take pictures and put it up electronically and no one complains, then there's no code enforcement action to be had. So a lot of that is, although electronic sales off of that lot could potentially by definition be automobile sales, if there's no complaint, we're not gonna take any action, as I said.
Now, is that what the vehicle's inside the fence or outside?
I think it's any,
If you look at
Well-
if you look at the existing conditions in the original IUP that was granted in 2021, property must remain neat and orderly, and trucks and trailers must be screened from the public right of way.
Okay.
so right now the trucks aren't being screened sitting there.
They are not being screened, that's correct. They are in violation of the IUP conditions by one, attempting to sell vehicles, we don't know if they've actually sold any, and two, those are not screened.
Is there anybody here
But
from
we've-
B&T Trucking?
We have not received any formal complaint, however, so we would not take action. We have other things to do than drive around and create code enforcement
So
cases.
if there was no complaint, why are we talking about it?
Because B&T Trucking cannot sell more than 5 vehicles because they have to get city's permission
To get a
So
dealer's
to get
license.
a dealer's license from the
That's,
Department
yeah,
of
that's the
Transportation.
triggering. That's
So
the
the
trigger.
zoning code says they can't. So
So-
for me to say in a formal letter to the Department of Public Safety that the sale of vehicles is allowed in this zoning district, I can't do that, because that would not be what our code says.
But who brought this up?
They did.
He
because
brought-
they're-
he
they're-
brought-
So he
me-
wanted to change it himself?
Correct, because
Okay.
he wants to
That's what I was
sell.
wondering, who did-
Yes,
okay.
yeah, he brought it to me.
Okay.
And there's too easy a workaround, and it's exactly as you explained.
And as I said at the planning commission meeting, there are also fleet vehicle sales companies where he could take his entire inventory and
Pay him a
dispose of it
commission.
and then purchase, but he would be paying a commission and probably
Yeah.
potentially losing out on some revenue.
Hmm.
But there are alternatives.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
So the motion's to deny?
Right.
Okay.
No further discussion? All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. So we approved Resolution 2024-29B, denying the interim use permit. You want a sip of water or something, Aaron? before you
I
go?
got some coffee. We'll keep moving forward here.
All right, our next item is 7A6. Conditional use permit for 1281 187th Ave Northeast, Designing Earth Contracting.
Although this looks nothing like it does today, this is the location.
there's
Just-
been some changes.
There has been some significant changes, which is a great addition to our city.
Yeah,
Designing Earth Contracting Incorporated, an East Bethel company, is in the finishing stages of their 1,900 square foot facility. I think he's actually probably moved in. Located at 1282 187th Lane Northeast. The applicant is requesting to expand the previously approved exterior storage yard to include a 40 by 80 or 3,200 square foot prefabricated PVC fabric hoop frame detached accessory structure for general storage. The property is zoned light industrial, which permits construction trade service by conditional use permit. The code also requires that exterior storage be regulated by conditional use permit, which you have approved. The detached accessory structure ordinance states that all accessory buildings and or structures over 200 square feet in size require a building permit prior to construction unless specifically exempt under the ordinance. The architectural design ordinance states that detached accessory structure over 200 square feet shall comply with the following code. They should incorporate a finished design and color scheme that coordinates and is compatible with the color and design of the principal structure. They shall have a minimum of 12-inch overhang and corner trim elements, and they shall include 2 architectural features on sides directly to or visible from the public right-of-way, such as windows, doors, material color variation, soffit, gable, dormer, and or decorative lighting. Section 14.4 also states that all accessory structures greater than 200 square feet must comply with the following regulations. A roof pitch shall be less than the minimum required from the International Building Code and shall not be the focal point of the property. Accessory structures shall be in similar design and building materials as the principal building. Pole buildings shall remain match the design of the principal structure as practical as possible. The main portion of Designing Earth's facility is on a 4-acre parcel with an adjacent 2-acre parcel. According to size regulations, a 4-acre parcel would allow for a 2,700 square foot accessory structure. If combined, a total of 6-acre parcel would allow for a 3,240 square foot accessory structure. On March 26, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, which there was no public comment. After review of the application material and hearing from the applicant, the Planning Commission voted by a 5-0 recommendation of approval of the conditional use permit amendment, with the condition that the conditional use permit amendment be revisited in 5 years from the date of approval. The City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve or deny this conditional use permit amendment as presented in 2024-30A or 2024-30B. Additionally, an amended CUP agreement must be fully executed by the owner if approved.
Make a motion to approve the conditional use permanent amendment with the condition that the conditional use permit amendment be revisited in 3 years from the date of approval.
is there a second? You're changing it from 5-year to 3-year, correct?
Mhm.
So, is there a second? Going, gone.
Dies on the vine.
So, that one died for lack of a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the 5-year approval on the 2024-30A.
Okay, just as a point of clarification here, Aaron, you got them in reversed order this time, so the first one's the denial and the second one's the approving. And neither of them say A or B on them, so,
Yep, that's what happens when I'm doing work on multiple days and my brain gets moving too fast.
So
If
it's
you want to
A.
just approve
Slow that
approval
brain
or
down.
approve denial, I'll get the appropriate resolution.
you want,
with-
what do you want it to be, A?
Yeah.
Approve
It
it.
doesn't matter, just vote to approve or deny.
Okay.
Approve.
I'll get the right one in place.
All right, so a motion's been made to approve resolution number 2024-30, which will approve the conditional use permit amendment. for Designing Earth.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now discussion.
Couple things I looked at, I found kind of odd, I think Jim noticed it, was they already have the frame up? Was that in mind reader anticipating we're gonna pass it, or?
This,
Oh,
much
that
like,
was their frame that you showed me? Oh,
much like the driveway scenario that we visited here a little bit ago, a stop work order was issued to this landowner to cease the construction prior to permit approval.
And I mean,
Okay.
they're a pretty classy business, but my concern is seeing what that canopy is made of. What's that gonna look like in a year and a half when it's all torn and flapping? Cause they're pretty spendy to replace.
The applicant in the planning commission meeting provided information to the planning commission that they have a 5 to 7 year life expectancy from the manufacturer. That's where you got the 5-year number added to the resolution out of the planning commission, so that in 5 years, when this comes in to be revisited, and if this is a tattered item flapping away in the yard there, we have some leverage to get it repaired.
Well, we have leverage prior to that, don't we? I mean,
We do.
the place that sells it probably out of California or somewhere where the weather's nice. This is Minnesota, I've got one of these up at my son-in-law's place, and well, I tell you, over the winter time between the cold and then the summer and the heat, that material just doesn't.
The distributor I found is in Ham Lake.
But that was part of my reasoning for the 3-year. And it could always be reapproved every 3 years. And the fact that it's on a corner lot and highly visible.
If it were the council's wishes to add to the motion that if this building were to be in a state of disrepair, that could be a violation of the condition and could trigger the possibility of us bringing the applicant back in to ask for either the conditional use permit to be amended again to remove the building or a repair.
That would be a smart
Okay,
move.
legal services, how do we do that without rescinding, I mean, we already did the vote.
It would just simply be an amendment to the resolutions on the table. So right now, the resolution is a resolution for approval with the conditions that Director Berg had written in there, so it was just a standard recommendation.
Right.
It would be a motion to amend the resolution, add that as a condition. There would be
Right.
debate, and then we'd vote on the motion. If it were to approve, then we vote on the resolution as amended.
All right, well, I move to make a motion to have it added as an amendment of, you know what your wording better than me, I'm not gonna.
I would classify it as what would be termed a state of disrepair.
All right,
Yeah.
if it becomes a state of disrepair, because it is, even though they say it's not visible, you can see it from the road. I mean, you can see it from Buchanan, you can see it, which is
Yeah,
interesting
let's see.
because the screening they've got on the north side is a fence, but if you look through it, you can see all the equipment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Okay,
talking
so
about?
right now, so you made a motion.
I made the
to
amendment.
amend,
Second that.
And it's been seconded, so do we vote on that first?
So there
I
can be.
still have
there-
a
yes,
couple of
yep.
questions,
So there can be,
but-
right now, the question on the table is the amendment and
Right.
only the amendment. So the discussion should relate to the amendment,
Okay.
and then you'll vote, approve or deny the amendment, and then you'll go
All right.
back to discuss the underlying CUP motion.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? If not, those in favor of the amendment as stated by Councilmember DeRoche and Community Development Director, Mr. Berg, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Just a couple of questions.
And
This,
now I move,
now we're back
Vote
to the,
now,
now
it's
we're back to
automatically
the,
back to the motion, and so the discussion is on the motion as amended. So
it's
with
back to
that-
the discussion on the
Yep.
on the motion.
Yep, yep. So you're
Okay,
right
so
back
that's-
into it. You don't have to do anything else. So now we're back into the discussion on the underlying.
Okay, can I ask a couple of questions then? All right, if I can find my place in my notes. This is a pretty large structure. What's the height?
Is it 13 feet, Jesse? 13 or, yeah, I think.
Really,
I
on a
saw-
40-foot width?
I believe that's what I saw in the specs. I don't
I know,
have
unless I'm mistaken, the 14 feet is the limit, right?
in sidewall height, that's correct.
yeah.
This technically doesn't have any sidewalls.
I know, I used to have a greenhouse, that's all.
But it also doesn't have a roof pitch, it doesn't have an
yeah.
overhang, so I mean, this is kind of open to you guys as an amendment to the exterior storage, as a temporary sort of fix. I know the applicant stated also in the planning commission meeting that if you look on the property itself, he does have the 3 lots that have been combined. If you look at the aerial, there is another site sort of prepped over here for a future building. And at that point, the temporary storage would go away and the items would be moved into the building. So this is a Band-Aid.
It's an
if you will.
interim thing,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
But I just had the question about the height, and then the only other question, again, is looking at looking at your discussion about the architectural requirements. Is it gonna be an enhanced flap on the end of it, or something? A gilded flap?
It will not meet the code for any of the
Okay.
detached accessory structure standards, but that's why we're here for an amendment.
It's a very,
to the
it's,
storage.
I've done that earlier in my life with a greenhouse, and it was a very effective way to get a lot of dry storage. So, it is. It's a smart way to do it, actually. Any further discussion or questions or what have you? Okay, if not, all those in favor of approving resolution number 2024-30, we'll
As
call it A,
As amended.
as amended, to approve a conditional use permit amendment for the placement of a temporary detached accessory structure for designing earth, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Now you can take a nap, Aaron.
Down, yes.
Okay, I'm not aware of anything for Economic Development Authority or Park Commission, so we're on to departmental reports. And Mr. Look, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. There was a request to schedule a spring town hall meeting. We wanted to look for a date that didn't conflict with other municipal or school district meetings. And we came up with the available dates that you see there, which would be Tuesday, April 16th, April 18th, April 25th, April 17th, April 24th, or April 30th. If there's a date that perhaps works for everyone's schedule, we can advertise that date for the town hall meeting.
I would make the suggestion of it being the 24th, 25th, or 30th, so that we get some time to advertise.
Okay.
That doesn't work for me, I'll be out of town.
Yeah, my first choice would have been the 25th, and my second was the 24th. Well, I could move that around. How about April 30th? You gonna be back in town?
Yes.
Tuesdays ain't good for me.
No? About you, Mr. Smith?
What works for Tim?
Not the 24th, 25th, or
Before that,
26th.
the 18th?
Yeah, 24th, 25th.
That would work.
Just want the council to know you're gonna have to answer all the planning and zoning questions, because the day this was published, I took every one of those days off.
Say what?
No problem. No problem, we can handle it. So the 18th works?
Should.
Is there consensus on the 18th?
Work for everybody else?
What's that?
18th.
No, that's a Tuesday.
Thursday?
That's Thursday.
Oh, Thursday?
Thursday.
Oh, I'm looking at 16th. Yeah, that's fine. That's next week, right?
2 weeks from Thursday. Is that right?
No, it's next week, next Thursday.
A week from
Well,
Thursday.
then we don't have the 2 weeks notice, do
We
we?
need to the publication notice, though. Is that a 10-day? I believe it's a 10-day notice.
Yeah, generally it's gonna be a 10-day
10-day
for the
notice.
publication, so if you can get it out tomorrow.
The newspaper publishes on Friday the 12th. That would push your 10-day notice out to the week of the 22nd.
Yeah, I'm gonna propose April 25th. That's, I know Tim's not
Sure.
gonna be here, and I know you want your fair share of abuse, but sometimes you gotta miss out, yeah.
So, 25th.
25th?
Unless you wanna move it to May. First week in May. Like the second,
2nd of May?
2nd of May. That's
Doesn't
on
bother
Thursday.
me.
On a Thursday.
I'd like to be there.
I didn't ask for that day off, Jim, but I will tomorrow.
That's okay.
Too late.
If you're not there, you'll be dismissed.
We can, check and see if there's any conflict with any other
Yeah.
meetings on the second.
I'd make it contingent on that.
What, if there's gonna be
Okay.
a motion and second contingent?
No motion has been made yet.
Make a motion for the town hall meeting for May 2nd,
Second.
as long as it doesn't conflict with anything else.
Correct.
May 2nd, that's the day, right? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Discussion. Sorry.
Is there any further discussion?
I just got one question. And the portion that will be in the council chambers, that will be broadcast, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Oh,
to
is
me.
that what we decided, or no? I misspoke, probably.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that was undecided as of yet in terms of, what shape that might take. It could take a shape of everything
We have
happening in
time
the senior
to-
center.
Yeah, we have time too.
It could take the shape of what happened last year or last time in terms of senior center then coming in here and televising, and it could take the shape of not televising.
Yeah, that, just so I'm on the record, I'm not going through what I went through last November again. If I see a coordinated group of self-serving people hijacking our meeting, I'm shutting it down. And I just want to be on the record, I'm not doing that again. That strained my patience to its absolute end.
Well, it doesn't do the city any good.
No, it's just people serving their own agenda, that's all it is.
Correct
And
me
I'm not gonna tolerate it, I'm not. And
Correct me,
if people don't like it, well, I'll take the blame.
sorry, Kevin. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the last town hall meeting, there was an episode where it cost the city a considerable amount of money when somebody put in a data request and never picked it up. Is that true?
That is correct.
Costs all of us a bunch of time, it costs the city staff time, and they didn't have the decency to come and even look at it. And, boy, that was the icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, we have our date, proposed date of May 2nd, and we can decide on the format and location and all that stuff as we go. We got at least 3 weeks, so.
I don't see anything on either of the city calendars, published calendars currently on the website that has a conflict with May 2nd.
So
Well, that's good.
Good. Need a motion.
Next item on the agenda.
Still got
Oh, we haven't, oh, that's right, that was our discussion, wasn't it? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of what we discussed, May 2nd?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None heard. Okay, the other issue is what Ms. Gimple referred to earlier in the public forum, and that's the Capstone LLC contract.
So, Mr. Mayor, we had Mr. Strike come in and kind of give us a presentation on some of the work that he does and some of his background and expertise. This action may change based on the public comment that was received here this evening. However, this is a contractual agreement for services to evaluate fire management and consultation. The contract is attached there. You'll see that the contractor is insured and is very knowledgeable in the work he does. I would hesitate to, I guess there was a claim that he was a good old boy or something of that nature. I would hesitate to go down that road just simply for the fact that, one, he's not able here to defend himself, number one, but secondly, I would say that he is a professional in the sense that he's been hired on numerous venues to do this type of work.
And we have done our due diligence with your help, looking at other work products that he's put out for other cities.
Right.
So,
I'm fully, I have no vested interest in the work he does or anything else.
neither do we.
But I would say he's fully competent to do this analysis and give us the information, give you the information you're looking for to ensure that the fire service is being operated properly and to qualify as your due diligence. And if you would like to look at other opportunities, we can certainly go down that road. We may ultimately come out with the same outcome, or who knows, so.
Well, it isn't a live contract until we sign it, so.
I move we go ahead with Capstone.
Okay, and this, I know it's confusing for the folks watching. This is not Capstone Homes, who are gonna be building the development on Viking Meadows Golf Course. This is Capstone LLC, so it's a different thing, but it is confusing. So you made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Discussion.
Aye.
Discussion? Okay, now, I got out of line. Now discussion, because I'm the one who asks questions. Maybe you guys do too, I don't know.
I got a question under B, compensation, item 1. States the city agrees to pay the contractor $10,000. I thought in our work meeting that we had it was stated up to $10,000.
Right?
So should that language?
Yeah, so now we're agreeing on a price of 10,000.
Or not to
That's
exceed.
the way, or not
to
approving it, whichever, yeah.
Okay, well,
If it was up
So-
to 10,000.
So, Mr. Mayor, in the initial discussions, Mr. Strike gave us an estimate of 5,000 to 10,000. We did meet with a council member who kind of, talked through some things, and I think based on that, Mr. Strike said, well, it's probably closer to 10,000 at that point for the work that's gonna need to be done, so. Trusting that based on his knowledge, whatever is gonna be involved to answer the questions we need to answer, going through surveys and everything else that are gonna be done, that the time invested will justify the expense.
okay,
Do you have more? Because I've got to ask something too.
well, I just wanted to clarify that because last information we were provided was up to, so.
Yeah.
Good thing you caught it.
Okay, as just a couple items I have is, I have one request, one amendment to this, and that is that I would like optional services, which is point B, number 1, review the city's emergency plan. I would like that moved into the primary service part as item 12. It doesn't, if there's any, I just want him to review the emergency response plan. If there's work to be done on it, then that's optional. But I think that should be included in the primary service. I think it's integral to it. So that's my one request.
When was the last time that was done?
I don't know. I don't know if it's
It
ever
was
been
done
done.
when I
don't know.
was still mayor. But God, that's been a long time.
And the only other thing I have to say about this is that just above the signature lines, it says City of Est Bethel.
I caught that as well.
Yeah,
Mr.
it
Mayor,
should be
we'll
East
correct that.
Bethel, yeah.
We'll correct that.
But otherwise,
We would have changed it if we could have, but we were using his form, so.
yeah, I mean, it's just a typo. It's nothing
Known in the
but-
world as an Scribner error.
Yeah, Scribner error, huh? Okay, whatever you guys say. So I'll just go ahead and, well, we got a motion, we got a second. So it would be the revised motion. Do we have to revise it by another vote?
So,
Or
Mr.
just-
Mayor, members of council, with this one, you're approving entry into the contract that's been provided. If your request is that we're going to amend the contract, it's not gonna, it's a little bit confusing. It's not gonna be an amendment to the motion itself. You're going to, if there's consensus with the council to amend the contract, then Administrator Look would bring it to him and say, council has approved the contract with this amendment.
Subject to.
And if for some reason, Capstone says no, it would come back to you. Or if they say it's gonna be more money, it will come back to you. So you're approving it with that one amendment. If they're good with it, then we got a contract, assuming the rest of the council is in agreement with the mayor, but yeah.
Yeah, if, Mr. Mayor, if I could say, B, their optional services is somewhat à la carte. So if we choose to identify those items under B that we want to include as well, there may be some financial ramification. I'll do my best to see if we can include that.
I have every faith in you, man.
But I think that you can approve A, primary service, and any B optional service that you want here this evening. So,
Well, I don't want to approve it, I want it included in the primary
Right,
services,
right.
that's all.
right.
So I don't know how to, I'm supposed to, I understood what you said, but I don't know how I'm supposed
Sure,
to
so I think-
restate it.
So I would say, Mr. Mayor, I would say the motion would be the primary service with optional service 1 included.
Okay.
Do we want to get a price on that?
Well, if it's not as I propose, which is it's included in the 10K, then it comes back to us like,
Okay.
Yeah, I think the actual amendment would be optional service 1 be added as a primary service, so then it would be under the same contract price.
yeah.
And if it ends up costing more, you know, we don't wanna do it here, but, you know, there's a potential we could say, you know, a little bit of buffer. But as of now, it's a $10,000 contract, and you're asking for that optional service to be included as a primary, which would fall under that amount. It wouldn't be additional, and if it's gonna be additional, you would have to approve the additional expenditure because it'd be a new contract.
Yeah, because it does state at additional cost.
Or, Mr. Mayor, the additional amount could be covered under professional services. We can approve that from an administrative level. So we
Well,
can be in,
don't tell Jerry that.
we can be in communication with you if that's how it lands, but I will
You
do
just-
my
you
best
just-
to.
Maybe I should handle this, I don't know, look. No, you know what I'm getting at, I think it's really part and parcel of the basic stuff.
Well, I think it is, though, important that we know which way it's going, so that our city administrator knows so there's kind of two ways that you can look at it. One, it's already an additional service that you guys can get. We don't know what it would cost or if it would cost additional. But, so basically approving the contract as is, or if you're looking to amend the contract. There needs to be clarity as to what document the city council is authorizing entry into, so that down the road we don't run into a confusion where there's additional services paid for and council may have thought that should have been a part of the flat $10,000.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong again, but it seems to me to approve the contract as amended
Correct.
is what we're talking about, right?
If council is inclined, if a majority of council is inclined to agree that amendment, they want that in the additional services, understanding that it may delay the process, there may become, you know, the 10,000 may no longer be the price, it may be additional cost based on the services that are now going to be provided. But if the rest of council agrees that they want that amendment in place, that moves up, then it'll be yes, approve the contract as amended.
All right. With that as our motion, am I on track?
I think we need consensus, or you can, you know, make a formal motion to amend, but I think we need consensus from the other council members. if
Are you
they
guys
want-
all right with that amendment?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure of the cost.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I
suffice.
don't want it
Okay.
to come out 15,000.
Well, then we just won't sign it.
Well, yeah, but if we say 10 and he's going through and going through and going through, so by the way, I'm not saying he would, right? But I don't know the guy. I just know open-ended deals. If somebody told me, look, I'll give you between 5 and 10, I'm gonna think, oh, 10,000, huh? Okay. Right?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps the cleanest way to do this would just be to motion the primary service, and then we'll set up another contract with him if need be for the emergency plan if he wants to charge us for it.
Wow.
Isn't
That
that
doesn't get at what I was
emergency
looking
plan
at.
something that the fire chief is supposed to do?
We're required to have one, yes.
'Cause I thought Mark Ducharme did it last time.
Yeah, he did. It was discussed, my first term, I believe.
All right,
My intent is to have the review of the emergency services plan included in the primary services. That's my intent with the amendment I proposed. So,
So if I were a council member in another council and this were presented to me, I would, because there has already been a motion and a second to approve the contract. During discussion, Mr. Mayor, you recommended an amendment. You could make a motion to amend to include the emergency response as a primary in an amount not to exceed $10,000, and then vote on the amendment, vote on the original motion, and kick it back to Jerry, and if Jerry says, I can't do that for 10, it will be 15, you'll see another contract for 15.
Yeah. That sounds like a good plan.
But
that makes sense.
I'm not a member of your council, but if I were on another council in another city,
You
that
are
might
on
be what I
another
would
council,
do.
Aaron. You're not fooling anybody.
That's correct. So if we're looking at this as a contract, an offer has been made to the city, you're looking to modify that offer by adding additional services, he will have an opportunity to either reject or
Right,
deny that. So we're
right.
just making basically a counter offer, and if he agrees with it, then we'll enter into it.
all right.
Okay, so we vote on the amendment first? Correct. All right. So there's a motion, I've made a motion to amend the contract to include the review of the city's emergency plan. Dang it, I don't have the thing right in front of me. The review of the city's emergency response plan, which as in the original form of the contract was included as an optional service. I want it included as the 12th point in the primary service. In other words, included under the $10,000 compensation. Okay? Any further discussion about that?
You need a second.
You'll need a second, yep.
Second.
Any further discussion about that? No? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. So back to the original motion to approve the contract as amended. We have a motion and a second for that already, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. That concludes that matter, I reckon.
Clear as mud.
You bet.
It's easy for you to say.
That's how we like it. And the next live, are there any council reports before we go to the closed session topic?
Yeah, I got a couple questions there. Heard it through the grapevine that the golf course was gonna be open another year,
Yeah, I heard that too.
and that Capstone was looking at maybe starting at the end of 2024. Any,
That is all unconfirmed information. I can tell you that I have seen an email to former members of the golf course to renew their membership for one more year because they are going to be open. Capstone is still in the process of doing their environmental as well as working with the county on right-of-way and all of those items. The anticipation is you may see a final plat in the end of May, but they still have a lot of work to do.
Well,
yeah, they had a couple punch lists, didn't they?
So
County, state, city.
It
All right.
doesn't appear to me in the tax record that Capstone has finalized the purchase. but there is some delay when that is all finalized and then the county gets it recorded, so I can't verify that that's the case, but what I see in
Right.
county records is it's not finalized yet. So,
Where the heck I don't even know where I saw that.
well, the email that went out
was
to
on-
all members would likely alert people in the community that the golf course will be open again another year.
It was somewhere in Facebook, the Facebook world. Any other council reports?
I had a Sunrise River WMO meeting. Had some good news that, we had some shoreline revision grants, approved for next year, I believe. I think they're both, $100,000 grants to help improve, multiple shorelines on the lakes in the Sunrise River. And, Sunrise also, more than likely ACD, found another potential source for grants that, we are investigating. Right now, it's looking good that, we could possibly have a brand new grant source. So, be looking more into that and see what comes of it.
Good. Thank
So-
you for the update.
Yep, and I saw that MnDOT put out a statement that road construction will be starting on 65 here, coming up, I think this week for
Yeah,
night.
Julie Bradstead put out something too.
Yeah, so,
Glad I live over in Coon Lake.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I did meet with Sheila Copy on this, and they will be coming in here probably in the next meeting to give a presentation on some of the work that's going to be done. Right now, I believe it's utilities that they're working on, the ditch that they're starting on. But there will be some lane reductions, and
Oh,
so we
boy.
want to make sure that they're in here to answer any and all questions as it relates to fire and EMS and all that sort of stuff, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Matt. So that brings us to item 9C, which is a closed session.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At this time, we're gonna recommend that the city council go into a closed session relating to property located at 19141 East Front Boulevard Northeast. The recommendation is for a closed session pursuant to the attorney-client privilege, Minnesota statute, section 13D.05, subdivision 3B, to discuss some potential and threatened litigation related to that property. So since this meeting will be a closed session pursuant to the attorney-client privilege, with confidential information being discussed pursuant to Minnesota statute, the closed session meeting will not be recorded. The attendees in the closed session will be all members of the council that were present at this April 8th city council meeting, as well as city administrator Matt Look, community development director Aaron Berg, and city attorney Tom Lunan. After the closed session, we'll come back into regular session, recap if any action is taken within the closed session, and then adjourn the formal council meeting. So at this time, I would recommend and entertain a motion to go into closed session in accordance with the statutory authority.
I move to go into closed session.
Second? Anybody want to second it, or you want me to?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of moving into closed session? Say aye.
Well, what about discussion?
Oh, yeah, discussion, that's right.
Does anyone need a 5-minute recess before we take the?
yes, please.
May want to include that in your motion, that we're gonna
Yeah.
get there at
Wait,
9:35.
Potty break at night.
I might need one myself.
Do we come back in here afterwards?
Yep.
You want to vote on that?
Next door.
Yeah, but then
All in favor?
Do you want to
Yeah.
vote on the motion?
We, did we?
I don't think so.
I
Well,
thought
we
we-
need you to recess before we go into closed session, so.
Yep, so you need to vote on it.
recess- Let's just document it as a recess prior to the motion, and then we had a motion to go into closed session.
There you go.
His procedural, I think, will be.
We'll just go
But
with
it's muted.
audio, and then we can cancel it if we need to.
Hello.
All right, we are now back in open session. We've just exited the closed session, which we entered into pursuant to attorney-client privilege. Present were all members of the city council, as well as city administrator Matt Look, community development director Aaron Berg, and city attorney Tom Lunan. In the closed session, the city discussed the potential and threats of litigation relating to property at 19141 East Front Boulevard Northeast. And there was no formal action taken in the meeting. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. We are now back in open session, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I guess I lied, I wasn't paying close enough
Sure.
attention.
Pursuant to discussions within the open session, I believe, while no formal action was taken in the closed session, I believe it is the desire of the action, or the desire of the city council to take a motion.
To reconsider the matter.
Yep, so we'll need to have someone entertain that motion, and if council is inclined to approve it.
With that being said, I make a motion for reconsideration of resolution 2319 at the next council meeting
On the 22nd.
on 22nd of April.
Second.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, gentlemen.
Discussion.
Any further discussion of the matter? Not all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None heard.
Make motion adjourn.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None heard.